Hey there, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are covering the 2022 best value free agents that are there for the 2022 offseason. Now, there's a lot of players that are going to be going for that mid-level exception and also on the minimum that are going to be able to elevate a lot of rosters around the league. And these to me are some of the guys that are definitely going to be big contributors. And also, I think they're cheap compared to what their output is going to be and what their impact will be on a roster. If you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We are covering a ton of NBA offseason content as well as the draft, so you don't want to miss any of it. Hit that subscribe button right now. So we will move ahead and go into the first player, Chris Boucher from the Toronto Raptors. Now, this is a guy that broke out in a big way 2 years ago under Nick Nurse. He was an exciting player to watch. He was averaging about 12 or 13 points a game. On the defensive end, he was an absolute monster. And you look at the progression of him as a player, of a guy that was barely cracking a rotation to all of a sudden a true role player on a team that was super competitive. Chris Boucher is a big time player. You very well could be looking at him as a mid-level exception guy. And I think that's very, very well worth it to a lot of these playoff teams. From what he brings on the defensive end is pretty important. 9.3 points per game this year, 6.2 total rebounds, 0.9 blocks. The one thing where he did regress a little bit from the previous season, he only shot 29% from three. And also he wasn't playing high level minutes. He wasn't playing a ton, only 21 minutes per game for him, which obviously you'd like to see that increase. And really, depending on where he goes, maybe that's the case. Chris Boucher, though, is an impactful player for a roster, especially a team, going into the postseason. I think he could be really, really good in terms of his switchability. I love Chris Boucher, and, people are going to continue to realize that he is an important piece on a playoff team, a really quality role player that can really go a long ways for you in having a guy like Chris Boucher. So he is one of those guys that I think teams should be, strongly considering to sign at this point. So I'd like him from the Raptors. Now, my next one is Tyus Jones, and I look at Tyus Jones's career is very interesting, considering that his start in Minnesota was pretty rocky overall. The expectations were super high, especially him, coming out of Duke and having all of that success in college, and then getting to the pros, playing for his home state. A lot of expectations in the actual area, where he grew up in, and he just didn't pan out. Now we fast forward to his time in Memphis, especially this past season. He really turned the page on the narrative of his career. 8.7 points per game, 4.4 assists per game, 0.9 steals, and he shot 39% from three, which was another huge uptick in his career. So I look at Tyus Jones as one of those players that definitely elevated his stock going into the offseason. Considering he has one of the highest, if not the highest, assist to turnover ratios of all time, which is absolutely incredible. This guy does a phenomenal job, and I mean phenomenal job, taking care of the basketball, being competitive. Even we saw him, get off his own shot a little more this year, which is, obviously important. But him being a true point guard on a second unit, to me, is extremely valuable. Especially in today's NBA, a guy that can, fully command that second unit, put the ball in the hoop, shoot the ball efficiently, and just take care of the basketball. That's the biggest thing at the end of the day. Setting up an offense, setting up a set, and looking at it, Tyus Jones is an important and was a big important piece to this Memphis team that, obviously there was a lot of players that contributed to this team. Desmond Bane, Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson, a lot of these guys were huge in their resurgence this year. But you look at Tyus Jones as a key contributor to this Memphis Grizzlies team. And honestly, I think that's going to earn him potentially, around that mid-level exception. We'll have to see kind of what the market is for Tyus Jones. And we'll have to see if he's able to cash in on a really, really good, productive season with a talented team in the Memphis Grizzlies. So Tyus Jones is another one we have to consider. Now we're going to be getting into more guys that are going to be along the lines of the minimum. And I look at Trey Burke as a player that kind of fell out of favor in Dallas. If you look at what happened there with the Dallas Mavericks, we didn't see a lot of Trey Burke. And if we kind of flash back to his time in the bubble, in that Clippers series in particular, that I do want to allude to. He was absolutely phenomenal. Trey Burke was lights out. I think he can contribute on a lot of different teams. Obviously, the Dallas Mavericks had a terrific season this year. Cut a little bit short. However, they had a really good year. Trey Burke could be a player that you have to refer to as a good shot creator on a second unit. And I think that's important for some of these teams when the offenses kind of become a little stagnant, when they don't have their stars out there. Who's a guy that can be an ultimate spark plug? Trey Burke has that ability. We had seen it a couple of years ago with Dallas, and throughout his career, he's kind of been on off. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at minimum level players, I think Trey Burke is one of those players you definitely have to consider. A really, really good shot creator, and a guy that when he gets hot, it's very tough to stop him. And honestly, fell out of favor with Dallas. I fully understand that, but Trey Burke could be an interesting name to watch in this offseason, considering it doesn't look like Dallas will retain him. Now looking at a guy that is starting to get a little bit of notoriety in the NBA community finally is Amir Coffey, the 6'7" point guard. Definitely saw a lot more time this year. Part of the deal with that is obviously Kawhi Leonard and Paul George's absence this season definitely helped. Paul George missed a ton of games. Kawhi missed the entire season. Therefore, other guys had to step up and be key contributors. Terrence Mann being one of them. Amir Coffey being the other beneficiary of the open playing time. And I think when you look at Amir Coffey and what he brings to the table, definitely one of those players that is intriguing on paper, looking at the 6'7" frame, and a guy that coming into the league could not shoot the ball at all. And I tell you, he could not shoot. But all of a sudden, once he got it with this Clippers organization, they got his jumper right. This year, he had an uptick in terms of volume and just overall percentage. Shot about 38% from three, 9 points per game. Only had about 3 rebounds a game. And he shot 86% from the free throw line as well. This is a key contributor, despite him being a restricted free agent. I don't know exactly what the Clippers are going to do in this situation. I know they want to bring back Amir Coffey. Ty Lue had a lot of trust in him throughout the course of the regular season this year. But I think when you look at his impact and what he can do, I mean, he's a longer defender too on these point guards when he's defending other point guards. So Amir Coffey is definitely an intriguing player, especially on the offensive end from what he can do. Definitely was able to hit a ton of threes this year. And that was not a part of his game in any capacity throughout his time, when he was first getting into the league and even at the University of Minnesota. That was not in his arsenal whatsoever. Now, next one, Wesley Matthews. Now, this is a guy that you had a feeling his time was running out. And then all of a sudden here in Milwaukee, especially in the postseason, definitely felt like his stock got boosted a little bit. Now, this is a quality wing defender, did a pretty good job guarding Jason Tatum during that series. He was tasked to do that a couple of times and definitely impressed people with his ability to stay in front of him. And I look at Wesley Matthews as one of those players that is a 3-and-D guy at this point in his career. He's not the same Wesley Matthews we used to see back in his day. However, quality wing defender and a guy that can still shoot the 3 ball. I think those are 2 key components when assembling a championship level roster, is finding those guys on the minimums, even if they're veterans, even if they're young guys, it doesn't really matter. Wesley Matthews can be an impact player in this league still. Granted, he is 35 years old. I think he has another year or 2 in the tank. And at the minimum, I think you can do okay with signing a guy like Wesley Matthews. And then finally, Danuel House from the Utah Jazz. You look at his season here, 6.8 points per game, 41.5% from 3. And you look at his impact in Houston. A lot of people were saying it was just, a lot of catch and shoot situations. The guy's not actually, a legit player. 6'6", really good perimeter defender. And honestly, looking at what he brings to the table, once again, you still have these guys that are big impact players, despite if they're more catch and shoot in the offensive side. But defensively, that's where a lot of their value comes: switchability, ability to guard multiple positions. That's what Danuel House brings. And I think that when looking at a team, they could definitely use those services, especially with how well he shot the 3 ball this year, which was pretty crazy. 41.5% from 3. This guy is a lights out shooter. He was able to prove it once again in Utah. So overall, this was my collective list of the top free agents, budget free agents rather, that are available in the 2022 offseason here. Hit that like button if you did enjoy the content. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to catch more of our NBA content. Thanks again for stopping by, and we will catch you in the next video.